Can you believe it? My boyfriend just broke up with me over a slice of pizza? Sounds like a joke, right? But the truth is, after 2 years together and countless memories, it all ended because I like to eat pizza in a slightly unconventional way. Yep, no cheating, no fights, no dark secrets, just a quirky eating habit that makes anyone who hears it shake their head and crack up. And that's exactly why I have to tell you this story. Lena, that's me. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? I work in marketing at a pretty big company in the city. But the reality is far less glamorous. Day after day, I wrestle with endless PowerPoint slides, argue with my boss over whether navy blue or sky blue feels more trustworthy, and squint at tiny commas until my eyes go blurry. My career life? Bland, nothing worth bragging about. But my love life? Oh, that's where things get dramatic. And that love had a name, Adrian. He was the kind of boyfriend that made all my friends jealous. Tall, always smiling, a software engineer at a gaming company. We'd been together for more than 2 years, and our official 2-year anniversary was coming up. Early in the week, Adrian texted me, "I've got a surprise for you on Saturday." And I was giddy, like I was about to enter a beauty pageant. My friends even started placing bets. Some were sure he was going to propose. Others said it had to be at least a romantic getaway. Saturday night, Adrian showed up in his silver pickup truck. I slipped on a fitted red dress, classy enough not to scream runaway bride, but still sending a little hint that said, "If you're planning to propose, I'm ready." The moment he saw me, he grinned and said, "You look amazing." Then handed me a bouquet of roses. Romantic, right? Well, here's the thing. He tied the bouquet with a plain old office rubber band. I looked down and giggled. "Where'd you even get this?" "Borrow it from the conference room." Adrian scratched his head. The ribbon snapped. Had to improvise. I teased him right back. Wow, classic engineer move. Coding computers by day, optimizing flower costs by night. We laughed all the way to this cozy little Italian restaurant, glowing with warm golden lights. Soft jazz floated in the air, wooden tables draped with crisp white cloths, and the smell of fresh pizza wrapping around us. Adrian glanced at the menu, ordered a bottle of red wine, then slyly slid his hand over mine on the table. The whole vibe was straight out of a Valentine's Day commercial, full of promise, sweetness, and a touch of awkwardness. I thought to myself, any minute now, he's definitely going to get down on one knee. But real life? It never plays out like the movies. Just as we started nibbling on the appetizers, a young waiter walked over. He set the tray down, looked at me with a grin, and blurted out, "Oh, you're the one who's famous for eating pizza in that weird way, right?" I froze for a second. Adrian, mid-pour with the wine, stopped dead, his hands suspended in the air, his face frozen like someone had just hit pause. I forced a smile, scrambling to diffuse it. You must have me confused with someone else. I'm not famous, unless you count being famous for dozing off in conference rooms." But that one comment was like flashing a giant red warning light straight into Adrian's eyes. Just moments ago, he was all bright and cheerful, but now he stared at me like I'd just confessed to eating pizza with chocolate hot sauce. He didn't say a word, just pressed his lips together in silence. I tried to keep things light, told a funny story about work, about the neighbor's cat that kept climbing onto my car. Normally, Adrian would have laughed out loud, tossed in a few teasing remarks, but that night, he just nodded half-heartedly. He didn't even bother to look up. I asked, "Are you feeling okay?" He gave a short reply. "I'm fine." I pressed, "Really?" Again, just a flat, "Yeah." The rest of dinner, he picked at his food in tiny bites, downed his wine, and avoided my eyes. I could feel something was off, but I had no idea how to bring it up. Inside, I was restless. Could one random comment from a waiter really flip his mood completely upside down? Then, just as dessert arrived, Adrian set down his fork and knife with a sigh. He looked at me, his voice suddenly heavy. "We need to talk." I sat there stunned, my heart sinking straight into my stomach. This was definitely not the opening line to a proposal. And that was the moment everything shifted. Because from one supposedly harmless joke about the way I eat pizza, our 2-year relationship started heading in a direction no one could have predicted. After that night at the Italian restaurant, I thought Adrian would text me the next day with some kind of explanation. At the very least, a quick "sorry, I was tired." But no, my messages sat on scene all day with no reply. When I called, it rang and then went dead. And when he finally did respond, it was nothing more than, "I'm busy." At first, I tried to reassure myself. Maybe he had an urgent project at work. He's a software engineer, after all. Deadlines chase them like hungry ghosts. But after a few days, it became painfully clear. Adrian was ghosting me. Not disappearing completely, but just enough to make me feel like I was talking to an automated voicemail system. I was so frustrated, I dragged my best friend Kylie into the whole mess. Kylie, famously blunt, blessed with a savage sense of humor. The moment I told her about the waiter bringing up my weird way of eating pizza, she burst out laughing so hard she nearly choked on her boba tea. Wait, are you saying your boyfriend's about to dump you because of how you eat pizza? Girl, what? Does he think you're cutting it with a knife and fork or something? I shot her a glare. Don't joke, he's seriously acting cold. Like, is eating pizza the wrong way actually a crime now? Kylie propped her chin on her hand, pretending to ponder deeply. Well, maybe he's one of those hardcore purists. Pizza should only be eaten with your hands. And you're basically out here breaking a 200-year-old Italian tradition. I sighed and pulled out my phone, typing into Google, "What do men hate most when dating?" The results were full of silly things. Eating too loudly, chewing gum obnoxiously, staring at your phone mid-conversation, or dipping ranch on literally everything. And as I scrolled, my cheeks started to burn. Why? Because I do have a dark secret when it comes to eating habits. I'm addicted to eating pizza with a fork. And not only that, I love dipping it in mayonnaise, then sprinkling canned corn on top. To me, that's the peak of culinary creativity. But to a true Italian, they'd probably want to hang me in the town square. I started thinking back to all our past dates. Sure enough, every time I ate my little DIY pizza special, Adrian would just glance at me and chuckle. He never once criticized me. I thought he found it cute. But now, maybe he'd secretly been stockpiling his horror all along. I couldn't accept that. So what if I had a quirky, slightly ridiculous eating habit? It's not like it hurt anyone. So I decided to invite Adrian out for lunch, determined to clear the air and explain that mayo and corn pizza wasn't some deadly crime against humanity. We met at a small sandwich shop near his office. My heart raced as I mentally drafted a whole speech. I'd talk about food culture diversity. I'd point out that McDonald's in Japan sells teriyaki burgers, for crying out loud. But my plan collapsed the moment I placed my order. On my tray was a little jar of sweet pickles, the kind I'd loved since I was a kid. Instinctively, I slipped a few slices into my sandwich. The moment I took my first bite and looked up, Adrian was staring at me, eyes wide. He didn't say a word, just set his glass of water down with a sharp exhale, then stood up. I thought he was grabbing extra napkins, but no, he walked straight out the door, never looked back. I sat there frozen, half a sandwich in my hand. My heart hurt, but at the same time, I almost wanted to laugh. Seriously? Was this really the reason he was about to dump me? A couple slices of sweet pickles? That moment was a mix of anger and disbelief. 2 years of love, after all the trips we'd taken, all the fights and makeups, suddenly on the verge of collapsing, all because of one weird little eating habit. After the shock at the sandwich shop, I started paying close attention to every little thing Adrian did. Before, he used to text me random sweet things like, "Have you had dinner yet?" Or, "Did you see that new movie?" But now, our conversations were clipped and dry. Then, through a mutual friend, I finally learned why. One afternoon, a coworker from Adrian's company messaged me, "Hey Lena, is it true you eat pizza in some super weird way?" I froze. When I pressed for details, I found out it was Adrian himself who had shared the story during lunch break. He'd told everyone, "My girlfriend eats pizza like a monster." Then he even mimicked the way I'd spear a slice with my fork, dunk it in mayonnaise, and sprinkle canned corn on top. The whole office apparently burst into laughter. I was furious and humiliated. Something private between the two of us, and he'd turned it into a comedy skit at work. And just like a chain reaction, the rumor spread fast. Our mutual friends even gave me a new nickname, Pizza Girl. When they saw me at the bar, they'd wave and tease, "Hey, Pizza Girl, show us those legendary eating skills." Inside, my anger boiled. But then I told myself, am I really going to let one silly little habit destroy everything? I still wanted to save this relationship. Adrian had been my rock for 2 years. I couldn't just let it all crumble over a few slices of pizza with mayonnaise. So I came up with a plan. I'd host a little group cooking night with a few friends, Adrian included. My idea was to show him I could eat normally, just like anyone else. Kylie scoffed at first. "Girl, this sounds like you're auditioning for Girlfriend of the Year, Culinary Edition." But I didn't care. As long as Adrian could see me differently, it was worth a shot. That day, we all gathered in a friend's big kitchen. The menu was simple, authentic Italian spaghetti. I promised myself I would eat exactly by the book. No mayonnaise, no canned corn, no weird twists. If I could just stay normal, Adrian would see he was overreacting. As the smell of tomato sauce filled the room, everyone laughed and chatted while cooking together. I sat up straight, carefully twirling the pasta around my fork, trying my best to look graceful. But my quirky food instincts wouldn't leave me alone. Staring at that plate of bright red spaghetti, I heard my grandma's old voice in my head. Add a little sugar, it balances the acidity, it'll taste smoother, sweeter. And then, like an involuntary reflex, my hand reached for the sugar jar on the shelf. Just one small spoonful. I sprinkled it quickly, thinking, no one's going to notice. But my mistake was thinking the whole table was too busy to notice. In an instant, it was like someone hit pause on the entire scene. Kylie's jaw dropped, and another friend burst out laughing. Oh my God, Lena just put sugar in her spaghetti? Laughter rippled across the table. My face burned red as I stammered, It's just a little bit. But it was too late. Adrian sat across from me, his expression impossible to read, like I'd just turned into some alien life form. He set his fork down, let out a heavy sigh and blurted, I can't live with someone who eats sweet spaghetti. The words dropped onto the table like a verdict. Nobody dared to laugh anymore. The air grew so heavy I could hear my own heart pounding out of rhythm. I was stunned. In my head I wanted to scream. Really? You're throwing away 2 years of love over sugar and spaghetti? But all that came out was a forced smile, as I muttered. Well, everyone has their own taste. The whole group glanced at each other, unsure whether to jump in or stay quiet. Meanwhile, I slowly swallowed a mouthful of sweet spaghetti, feeling both hurt and amused by the absurdity of it all. After the cooking night fizzled out in awkward, half-joking laughter, I dragged myself home with one relentless question circling in my head. Is having quirky eating habits really enough to be considered a red flag? I vented to Kylie on the phone. On the other end, she didn't even bother to comfort me. She just burst out laughing. Girl, you're not just quirky. You've got enough material to open a whole restaurant in an alternate universe. The menu would be mayo and corn pizza, sweet spaghetti, and pickle sandwiches. I collapsed onto my bed, face buried in a pillow. Sounds like a Michelin star nightmare. Kylie wasn't done. Who knows? Maybe you turn it into a franchise and end up a billionaire. Jokes aside, I actually started thinking about it. Those weird combos of mine didn't just come out of nowhere. They were tied to my childhood. I remember so clearly. Back in my hometown, my grandma always made spaghetti her own way, nothing like the cookbooks. Instead of leaving the sauce tangy, she'd toss in a handful of sugar and stir until it gleamed. She'd say, "This way it warms the stomach, sweetheart." I grew up with that flavor. So familiar, it became my standard. And pizza? My family was never fancy about food. We'd usually buy frozen pizzas from the supermarket, bake them at home, then everyone would add their own twist. My mom loved squeezing on mayonnaise for extra richness. I copied her, then sprinkled canned corn because it looked fun. As for sandwiches, well, our fridge was never without a jar of Grandma's sweet pickles. I'd slip them into bread for school lunches, and sure, my classmates gave me weird looks. But at home, no one thought it was strange at all. My whole childhood was filled with those fusion dishes. To me, they were the taste of family, of cozy evenings gathered together. But for Adrian, it turned out they were a deal breaker. After the disaster at the group cooking night, I decided to try one last move. Bringing Adrian home to meet my family. I believed that if he saw everyone in my house eating this way, he'd realize I wasn't weird. I was just following family tradition. So we drove back to the small town where my grandma still lived. That evening, the table was set with a full spread of creative dishes. Fried chicken with honey, burgers topped with pineapple and syrup, mashed potatoes drizzled with strawberry sauce. To me, it all felt so familiar, so comforting, so warm. Adrian was another story. From the very first bite of chicken, he winced. When I excitedly handed him a pineapple burger, he forced a smile, took one bite, then set it down. His eyes darted around the table, wide and unsettled, like he'd landed on the wrong planet. I kept trying to keep the mood light, sharing childhood stories, explaining that these dishes were my family's traditional recipes. But the more I explained, the further away Adrian seemed to drift. He sat in silence, twirling his fork without touching another bite. Finally, he set the fork down and stood up. His voice wasn't loud, but it was firm enough for everyone at the table to hear. "I can't take this anymore. We're just too different." The whole room froze. Grandma looked up, and Kylie's jaw dropped. Yes, she tagged along because I needed backup. I just sat there, the sweet taste of pineapple burger still lingering in my mouth. This wasn't just a passing complaint. This was a verdict. Adrian was breaking up with me. Not over fights, not over betrayal, but over my ridiculous eating habits. As Adrian stood and walked away from the table, leaving behind the words, "We're just too different," I sat in stunned silence. 2 years of love, countless memories, all coming to an end because of the way I ate pizza. At first, it felt like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water straight onto my heart. I kept replaying the thought in my head. 2 years of love over just the way I eat pizza? I went to my room, pulled the blanket over my head, and cried like a kid. But through the tears, I suddenly started laughing. Ridiculous, isn't it? If he dumped me just because of a slice of pizza dipped in mayonnaise, then he never really loved me in the first place. Love can't be so fragile that it crumbles over a quirky eating habit, right? Of course, Kylie was the first one there to comfort me. She sat beside me, handed me a box of tissues, and in that half-serious, half-teasing tone of hers said, "At least you dodged a bullet. Imagine if you two got married and every single meal turned into a battlefield. You'd be stressed to death. Now you've still got a chance to find a guy who actually likes sweet spaghetti like you do." I shot Kylie a glare, but I had to admit, she was right. I couldn't spend my life with someone who treated my taste buds like a culinary crime. In the middle of all that emotional chaos, I decided to do what any young person would do, post about it on Reddit. I typed up a story titled, "My boyfriend dumped me because I put mayo on pizza. Am I the villain?" Within hours, hundreds of comments poured in. Most people were cracking up, and some even shared their own stories, like getting dumped for adding condensed milk to green tea, or for taking the meat out of burgers just to pile on more veggies. I read them while laughing through tears. At least, I wasn't alone. One comment that shot to the top of the thread has stuck with me ever since. "Girl, if he can't handle your pizza, he doesn't deserve your dessert." That line felt like medicine for my soul. I burst out laughing, really laughing, for the first time in days, and finally felt a little lighter. That night, I closed my laptop and glanced around the kitchen. On the counter sat an unopened can of corn, and it hit me. Maybe to Adrian, that was the end of the line. But to me, it was just part of who I am. If someone truly loves me, they'll accept the jar of mayonnaise sitting right beside me too. So I want to ask you, the one listening to my story, if you got dumped for something like this, how would you react? Have you ever gone through a breakup over a ridiculous reason? So let me know, just so I don't feel like a total weirdo for the way I eat. Thanks for sticking with me through this whole story, and don't forget to support me by hitting that subscribe button.